not only is he cool, cocky, and bad, he is quite simply the greatest Intercontinental Champion in the history of professional wrestling, and that is the one and only Honky Tonk Man. Thank you so much for joining the two-man power trip of wrestling.
Well, thank you so much for that fine introduction. You know, normally I have to correct people, and they say all sorts of silly nonsense, but you nailed it, baby.
All right, yeah, no, totally. One of my all-time favorites. Not gonna lie, the cool, cocky, bad comes from my favorite promo of all time from Saturday night's main event against the Macho Man in Philadelphia, Pennsylvania, I believe, somewhere in PA. The start of the Mega Powers, but more importantly, the night the Honky Tonk Man threw down the lovely Elizabeth, and we're going to get into that in just a minute. But first, we want to talk about this coming Saturday night, WrestlePro in Rahway, New Jersey. Not only is the Honky Tonk Man going to be there, but he's going to be a part of a team called the Rhythm and Blue World Order. What are your thoughts on this shocking advertisement of the Honky Tonk Man and the Blue World Order on the same side?
You know, I kind of like it. It's something that I was a fan of the Blue World Order from back when it started. I loved what those guys were doing, and I enjoyed seeing it whenever I had a chance to watch it, and out on the road in different places, I'd catch their show, and yeah, it's just it's going to be fun, you know. I mean, it's not like having rhythm and blues where, you know, I've got to wait for Valentine to wrestle 45 minutes to get warmed up.
That's got to be one of my all-time favorite lines when you talk about Greg the Hammer Valentine, a great Gorilla Monsoon anecdote.
Yes.
35, 40 minutes.
Yeah, I was at the Wales Comic Con. I was in Wales, England, at the Wales Comic Con this past weekend. And fans over in Wales came over and was talking to me about different things that Bobby Heenan would say, and he mentioned the thing about Valentine. It's just, yeah, Monsoon would always say it. You know, it takes Valentine 45 minutes to get warmed up, and I thought that was the greatest. I said, you know, that's really funny. That's nice.
Oh, it's funny. It's one of those things that stands out because, you know, whether or not it's true or not, I don't know, but Gorilla Monsoon said it pretty much every time there was a big match that the Hammer was in. So we can pretty much take it as gospel. But you mentioned being over in Wales, being over in England. I saw some of the pictures on your Twitter. What a dedicated fan base. But how do those fans in England compare to the rowdy crowd of a Northeast New Jersey night like we will have on Saturday night in Rahway?
You know, we had on Saturday night over in at Preston City, there was about 900 people, and I can compare it to very, very similar to what's going to happen over there in Rahway. And I mean, the fans love professional wrestling. Fans love professional wrestling, and they love to get there and get involved, and they love to see everything and be entertained. And no matter where I go around the world, the wrestling fans, they're fabulous. They always have been.
One of the most unique things about the WrestlePro poster, if you get a chance to take a look at it, is it's very reminiscent of a Saturday Night Live, advertisement, and it has musical guest, the Honky Tonk Man, and obviously the theme song. And this is kind of funny, and John will get a kick out of this. I'd like to talk about another theme song, and that's the follow-up to the great Honky Tonk Man song, and that's the Rhythm and Blues theme song. Where did that come from, and were you a fan of having to change it to incorporate the Hammer into it? It seems like you were doing double duty on vocals.
Yeah, because Valentine could never remember the words. So but
you can hear the double down on the vocals. It's very funny if you get it.
Yes.
Honk you love.
I have a picture of him and I'm holding the microphone up to his mouth, and I tell people, I said, look, Valentine doesn't even know the words. He's not singing. So, but no, you know, I enjoyed doing that, and the rhythm and blues thing. Greg didn't put a lot of effort into it, and he regrets it now. And if you ask him, he'll tell you, you know, I wish I would have put the time and effort into it and tried to make it work. And he really didn't do it because he wanted to be Greg Valentine. He didn't want the black hair. He didn't want to do the show business. I'm a wrestler. I said, well, if you want to wrestle down the YMCA, because this is WWF and Vince McMahon wants entertainment. You know, we're out there with Hulk Hogan, Macho Man, and the Warrior, and people like that. I mean, you got to pick up the pace, brother. that old Charlotte NWA going out and woo, woo, and going 60 minutes. That doesn't cut it with the over in WWE.
Very true and very well said. But, you know, the sports entertainment aspect of things is very interesting. And the Honky Tonk Man himself and that gimmick, where did that come from? Was that all of Vince's brainchild, or is that something you guys came up with together when you came into
I kind of created that thing 5-6 years before I was ever on the scenes with the with WWE. I had it in Pensacola, Mobile, down in that in Southeastern Wrestling is where I created it. Then I carried it to Calgary to Stu Hart, then back to Pensacola, then back for Stu Hart again, and then over to WWE. So I had worked on the thing for about 5 years and had pretty much perfected it and had it down to how I could make it work, and consequently, you know, it did work.
Oh, it definitely did work. But the funny thing is about the gimmick at first is Vince kind of wanted you to be a face, and you obviously, you know, you eventually became a heel. But did you think that it was going to work as a face, or did you think this gimmick definitely needed to, you know, basically be a heel?
Oh no, I never designed the character to be as a good guy at all. And when I went there, I told him that, and then and he Vince has always been one of these. Vince is a creator of merchandise. He still is a merchandise type person, and he sees merchandise as the real cash cow. Well, and of course, which it is in a lot of cases when you look at a John Cena or Stone Cold or The Rock or Hogan, Undertaker. These have been cash cows for merchandise, and I told him in the very beginning that I didn't think I could make it work that way because I mentally didn't know how to make it work because I had always been a bad guy, always, and they tried this and it. You know, and it was a total flop. I mean, it was a disaster. I'm just glad they decided to give me a second chance as a bad guy because otherwise they would have washed me out.
Very true. And with those promos, it was kind of, you guess you were a face, but those promos with Jesse the Body as you were kind of returning heel, were those made so that you could turn heel, so the crowd would kind of turn on you, or Vince kind of was thinking he still could push you as a face at that point?
No, I think he still thought it, but it, you know, I owe a lot to Jesse, even though we don't talk now, and of course, he don't talk to anybody in the wrestling business anymore, but, it was his idea to do the 1-800 vote of confidence thing. That was a nonsense. There was no such thing. There was no 1-800 number, and we did that for 2 weeks. It went on for 2 weeks of television. And they would give the results 1 week, and then on the second week the results for him, and that was his idea, and it was a fabulous way to do it. That really didn't cost anything other than 30-45 seconds of TV time. There was no big angle involved in it where you turn on someone or someone turns on you, so it was done very, very easily.
Now, the idea for the attire, the cool, cocky, bad, the attitude, I mean, you just had it kind of factor as a heel. Was that all you kind of coming up with the look, the style, and the awesome attire that you had as well?
Oh, yeah, I brought the whole thing with me. I mean, the name, Honky Tonk Man, all the stuff, everything. The song now, Jimmy Hart did that. So Jimmy put that song together, and it kind of went right along with what we did with the long sideburns, hair slicked back, coming through your town, a pink Cadillac. So he was doing the music, and the music fit the character, which only enhanced it. It enhanced the character.
Absolutely. And are you surprised, like 30 years later after basically the debut of that character and the debut of that theme, that theme is still so popular and so many people are still, rehearsing it in their head or singing it?
Everywhere, places where I go, like I'm coming in for uh, the fellas on Saturday night over there in New Jersey. I'll get there and probably someone will say, we were driving down today to the show and we put your song on and it's been stuck in our mind for the whole trip down here. We can't get it out, and it's just one of those little catchy tunes that it kind of sticks with people and. It's been really, really good. And you got to remember now, for the last 15 probably years, I've been a good guy. I'm not the bad guy, Honky Tonk Man anymore. And the fans love to see, they love to see me come out as a good guy, and they love to hear the song. And we're going to do that Saturday. We're going to sing the song and get everyone involved, and it's going to be really fun.
That is great. And, Jimmy Hart, obviously, like you said, he created that music, created that song. What did you think of the pairing with you and Jimmy? Because you guys seem like you guys are absolutely perfect together.
It was a natural fit. I had worked with Jimmy several years before that in Memphis when myself and Kevin Sullivan were a tag team. And he created this thing called the First Family of Wrestling and had a couple more guys. And Jimmy was doing music for Jerry Lawler and Jimmy Valiant and for all the guys there in Memphis because the Freebirds had kind of started the music thing where, they were coming out to the Freebird music and at that, prior to that, no one was doing music at all. So then Jimmy got involved and started doing stuff with Lawler, and then we started doing videos along with music videos, which was right in the forefront of all this, and it was, kind of the grandfather of all these things that happened. And Jimmy, of course, being involved in the music business was he was a natural for it, and he understood me. I understood him because we had worked together, and Jimmy had always been a great wrestling fan. He has a great mind for the wrestling business, even though he's never been a booker or promoter or anything of that nature. But he's very observative on the people's personas and the characters, and we fit like a glove. And I've always tell people it's hard to get the gears when it's all clicking. Man, it's going down the highway at 100 miles an hour and nothing can go wrong. But it's hard to get the gears to click, and it's like I talked about the rhythm and blues earlier. It just didn't click, and neither did the rockabilly thing. Billy Gunn didn't really care about doing it. He didn't want to do it. And if you don't put your best effort forward, the fans see through it. And if the fans if they don't get behind it, you're lost out there. And I see that with a lot of young guys in WWE in the last 4 or 5 years, and especially now.
Well said, for sure. And what's interesting, you mentioned Memphis, you mentioned Jimmy Hart, but I kind of want to circle back a little bit to Memphis because obviously, as everyone knows, your cousin is the king of Memphis, and that's Jerry the King Lawler. And we had Jerry Jarrett on the show not too long ago, and we had Bill Dundee on the show not too long ago, and they were talking about their favorite match in the history of Memphis, and that was the Tupelo concession stand brawl with you and Spot against Jerry and Dundee. Can you just kind of rewind back and tell us a little bit about that crazy, crazy match?
It was something spur of the moment. It was something that just happened. That Jerry Jarrett had this. He was in a predicament where the Robert Ron Fuller and the Mongolian Stomper, Mr. Fuji, and Professor Tanaka, and that whole group of guys were working in Memphis for Jerry Jarrett and were kind of running the whole thing. And they decided to up and leave and go back to Knoxville. And just at spur of the moment, they all left Jerry with. He had Jerry Lawler, he had Bill Dundee, he had Tommy Gilbert, he had Coco Beware, and Larry and myself. We were finishing up in Florida and needed a place to work, and he gave us a date to come right in right away, and we got in the car, and for the next day and a half we didn't stop or sleep and we got into Memphis on a Thursday and did that thing on Friday night in Tupelo, and it really changed the way that the whole territory changed just right on a dime. It went from doing no business at all to turn away crowds for the next 6, 7 months. And then we took it to Nashville for another promoter, and it did it. And then it's been duplicated. And there was a young fella in the locker room watching all this. It was just starting. His name was Eddie Gilbert, Tommy Gilbert's son. And Eddie eventually went over and met up with a guy, Paul Heyman, and a couple more guys in Philadelphia. And they created, the hardcore ECW.
Very, very true. And Heyman, obviously, as truth goes on with the story of him, he would end up in Memphis for a little bit, not too long, but for a little bit. And obviously, he was involved in a big feud with Austin Idol and your cousin Jerry the King Lawler. But what's it like in that territory of Memphis? Because we go back and we watch the tapes on YouTube, or we get the Corey Macklin DVDs or whatever. But just the crowds were crazier in Memphis. The brawls were crazier. Something about Memphis is just awesome, and was such a hotbed for wrestling.
Well, it wasn't just Memphis. It was all over the South. When you got past the Mason-Dixon line, things tended to change. St. Louis was a Harley race, and guys, I think of some of the guys there. The Luthez is out of St. Louis, and it was more of a wrestling, like a Vern Gagne, Minneapolis territory. And when you got down into the Nashville and Memphis and Arkansas, and even Bill Watts, toward the end, Bill Watts had always kind of shied away from doing the stuff we were doing over in Memphis. And even though it was very close to his territory, Mid-South, he eventually knuckled under and started doing things. But the Fullers had always done this kind of stuff in Knoxville and in Atlanta and down in Pensacola and Mobile. So it was really a big thing in about a 5 or 6, 7 state area. Now, when you got down into Tampa, it was a little bit different. It wasn't the same. But that's how I broke into the business, and that's all I really ever knew. And that's the way I wrestled, and that's the way I worked. It's the bad guys were really, really bad guys and could make people riot and make people want to destroy, make people want to kill you is what we tried to do, and a lot of times we came very close to it. And of course the good guys were the absolute good guys. I mean, they were lily white and perfect in every way, and the girls loved them and the fans loved them, and we would have these brawls that it just excited the fans to a frenzy. And I still think there's a place for that. WWE just, I don't know, they've drifted away from getting those things where, you have two guys that are going at each other that's with a really, really a hot feud. For some reason, they don't want anything to be what we used to call hot. And there was never anybody hotter than this guy, Tommy Rich. He was a Hulk Hogan before there was Hulk Hogan. And holy Christ, this guy, I mean, you hit him one time, he starts crawling and begging, and you hit him again, and you got the gimmick hidden in your tights, and you hit him with a zap, and the fans are ready to kill you. It was something. I mean, I had my tires slashed, the windows broken out of my car, hotel rooms, the doors knocked in, and it was bad. It was really bad. The only other place it was worse was Puerto Rico. And they did pretty much the same thing. They did a lot of the same thing in Puerto Rico.
Definitely a crazy crowd down there in Puerto Rico, and especially there's this crazy crowd in Memphis. And like you said, Heyman definitely did get a lot of his psychology and a lot of what he did in ECW from Memphis, for sure. But do you think that, especially through the 80s in WWF and into the 90s, but do you think that most of the good talent did have to kind of go through Memphis, get their start, and then go to WWF? Because you had Hogan, Macho Man, Jesse the Body, Bam Bam Bigelow, like we said, Paul Heyman even to an extent. So many guys went through Memphis and then came to WWF?
Well, we all went everywhere. You know, I went through San Antonio, I went through Nashville, Atlanta, I went through Florida and Tampa. I was in Knoxville for Mulligan and Ric Flair when they owned Knoxville, and we went up out of the Memphis territory. We were up where there was the towns were split with Dick the Bruiser in Louisville and Evansville, Indiana. So we would share talent with Dick the Bruiser, guys that came out of Chicago, and it was one of those things where the wrestlers would drift around to every territory, and that's how you really learned your craft. And you learn you learn different styles, because the style and like I said, in Tampa and Miami and that territory was a little bit different than Memphis. Atlanta with Ole Anderson, when he was in charge over there, it was more hardcore wrestling, rough, tough guys, and Bill Watts wanted legitimate wrestlers and football players. And over in Charlotte, they wanted longer, drawn-out matches where, there wasn't a better tag team around than Tully Blanchard and Arn Anderson when it came to being in Charlotte and over there. So, but you had all these different places, the different styles, and that's when you travel around for 5 or 6 years. That's how you grow as a professional, and you what you do is you perfect your craft. And you mentioned WWE and all the guys. When I was in that locker room, everyone in there had been in the business 10, 12, 15 years. The youngest guy in the locker room was like Paul Roma. He was like he'd been around 3 or 4 years, and he was like one of the youngest guys in there. Him and Jimmy Powers. They were just like kids with all of us old veterans.
And that's what I think is very lost when it comes to the new school fan versus the old school fan, because we already knew pretty much everybody back in the day and where they had come from and where they had been, and that's what kind of hurt about seeing what a gimmick might be doing to a guy under Vince's watch. But the moniker, the greatest Intercontinental Champion of all time, was a great catchphrase during your run, but it's morphed into an actual reality because it's a cliche question. I'm sure you've been asked this question a billion times over the last 10 years. But the Intercontinental title really having meaning while you held it, and now it's kind of a prop, mostly like every title. But when did you really become the greatest Intercontinental Champion of all time?
I took that, which we all take a little bit from everyone. We take something from this guy, something from that guy. You steal a little catchphrase from this guy, from that guy. And I took that from Muhammad Ali. I'm the greatest of all time. I'm the greatest. I can't be beat. Nobody can beat me. I'm the greatest of all time. And I would say that over and over and over on every interview. Look, Mean Gene, I can't be beat. I'm the greatest of all time. Nobody can beat me. And every kid out there that was 6, 7, 8 years old, they knew they could kick the shit out of me. But it wasn't until they did a survey, or they did a voting thing on WWE.com several years ago. Now they've done a couple of them, but several years ago, and I ended up getting the votes for that. And it was like people said, well, he's not the greatest of all time. The other guys is better. But over a period of time now, like you said, and you look back at the diminished effect and the diminished drawing power of the Intercontinental belt, of all the belts, like you said, then you have to say, well, gosh, when you look back at it, the guy probably was the greatest of all time. He had the dadgum thing for 64 weeks, and and they probably could have had it longer if they wanted to keep it on him longer. It might have gone on for a long, long time. But all the belts have been diminished. They all. No one knows who's the world's champion. World's champion means nothing anymore. It means nothing.
And that's a crying shame. It's absolutely terrible to think about it, because you talk about that poll, you talk about the fact they do who is the greatest, and they put a guy like Ricky Steamboat on the list, who, with all due respect to Ricky Steamboat, former guest of the show, we love him to death, really only had the belt for a couple of weeks. In theory, on television, it might have been a little different, but the guy that he beat was the guy that you ended up having a huge 6-month run with in the WWF over the Intercontinental title, and that's, the Macho Man. And this is one that I kind of want to throw at you because this is, like I said, that promo from Philadelphia, that's one of my favorites of all time. But the night of the Andre Hulk Hogan main event, NBC Live, you guys were the undercard. You could not even hear the announcements. The crowd was so red hot. What did it mean to be on that show and in front of literally the biggest crowd to ever watch professional wrestling on television?
Well, we didn't know. Obviously, we didn't know that the crowd was going to be that big. It's like WrestleMania 3. We never knew it was going to be that big. I mean, we knew it was going to be big, and we knew going into that Saturday night main event it was a live show on television, which was no big deal for us because we had all worked live television before, and that's how we like to work, is live TV. I never like to do tape television. I like to go out and do it live and just do it off the cuff. But it was another night at the office. We were working 60, 70, 80 days in a row, so that was just another day. And it was not a big deal until after the numbers came in. They said, "Oh, gosh, there's 35 million people watch this." Really? Well, that's great. But we got to move on and go on to the next show. I mean, you can't rest on your laurels. But it was really something, and that was a big show. It was a big card that was put on that night, and it did very well. And I was lucky to be part of it. Now, you mentioned Macho Man as the Intercontinental, and of course Steamboat. I don't even know how Steamboat even gets ranked in there, because nothing against Ricky. I was with him in Wales this weekend. Nice guy. He's always been pleasant and very charming fellow to be around and everything. But he only had the belt from. He wanted it to WrestleMania, which was like end of March of that time, and then he lost it the first week of June. So he had it, April, May, he had it 8 weeks, and that's not very long, and to even be considered. But I didn't know until later on, like just a few years ago, that Macho Man, I had the belt for 15 months, and he had it for like 14. I mean, I wasn't that far ahead of Macho being holding the belt longer than anyone.
Yeah, and that's what I think a lot of the old school fans recognize when you think of the Intercontinental title. You think of longevity. You think of guys like Macho Man. You think of guys like the Honky Tonk Man. But we're still literally, I can hear it ringing in my ear, and that's the guitar shot on both Jake the Snake and on the Macho Man on that one Saturday night's main event. When you go back to hit them, you bring that bad boy over your head, and you don't know what's going to come out on the other end. Is the shot priceless to you when you look back at it? Is that something that you go, wow, man, they dropped like a sack of potatoes?
The thing is, and here's where I put Randy above and beyond anyone else, and also Bret Hart too. Bret was the first guy that on a Saturday night main event, he wanted to be hit in the back of the head. And I never wanted to do that. I didn't like it. I'd never liked to hit anyone in the back of the head, period. It's just one of those things where I would prefer for someone to be seeing what's going to happen. And I would, if it was me, I darn sure want to see it coming. But Brett being what does he call it? Perfect, whatever, excellence of excellence. He said, I don't want to be looking at it. I'd rather have it from behind, like an ambush, so that, because he wanted to break it down to, if I see it coming, I should dodge it and do. Well, that's Brett for you, but that's okay. But it worked out. It worked out anyway. And with Macho Man now, he's just give it to me, man. Just give it to me. So he didn't mind, and he took a pretty good shot. It didn't hurt him at all. I mean, no one was ever injured by that. I got injured more than anyone when Billy Gunn almost killed me with the dadgum thing. As far as Jake, the thing with Jake, there again, I went out on that particular interview that night as a good guy, and Jake was a bad guy in the snake pit. And within a matter of 30, 45 seconds, I had hit Jake with a guitar. Jake was now like the number 2 good guy in the company, and I turned to be the number 2 bad guy behind Andre within a matter of seconds with not a lot of investment. Just walk out there and Jake starts to ridicule me and make fun of me, and he gets hit with a guitar. Now, mind you, he's always said that the guitar put him in rehab, but the guitar didn't put him in rehab a half a dozen times. So take that with a grain of salt.
His reaction is he literally drops. I mean, it's quite the sight to see. But you say being the number 2 heel, and that main event program with Hogan and Andre, led to quite unhappy crowd right after that. You were supposed to headline the Meadowlands with Hulk Hogan, title versus title, champion versus champion. Obviously, one guy didn't go in with the belt, but at that point, having any kind of program with Hogan was obviously the pinnacle of somebody's career. You work 9 days sometimes in a row, or 9 shows in a week, or something like that. But with Hogan being the champ at the time, you being the Intercontinental champ, do you think that was the best duo to be carrying the company?
It turned out to be pretty good. It worked. I think Macho Man could have done the same thing. I don't know what would have happened if Macho Man had gotten the belt on that Saturday night main event that 35 million people watched, and if his run, he probably would never have been world champion. Who knows what the outcome would have been, but the way it worked out, anyone running second behind Hogan we were all second. Let me put it, listen, Hulk Hogan was the man. I don't care what you say. This guy was a cash cow from day one. He sold tickets. People came from miles around us to watch this. And you know what? They came to see me get beat. I could sell out an arena with Lanny Poffo, with S.D. Jones, with anyone on the card. They wanted to see me get beat. They came from miles around to make sure that no one beat Hogan. We turned crowds away because people were afraid Kamala might beat Hogan. Kamala might hurt Hogan. That's how big this thing was.
Absolutely. And Hogan is, the Babe Ruth of wrestling. Do you feel like he's not kind of getting the respect he deserves as the Babe Ruth of wrestling with all this controversy going on?
But, that comes with the territory. Look at Tiger Woods. I mean, I think yesterday or the day before, I was listening to talk radio and someone said, Tiger Woods played 5 holes of golf, and people were out there and they were watching. He looked like a 50 or 60-year-old man swinging the club, and does he still have it? Can he come back? Or, all of our great icons and our heroes, we always tend to destroy them and bring them down. Mike Tyson, a great boxing champion, which obviously, they're self-destructive in their own ways. You can't say that they're not. They all bring a lot of that stuff on themselves. And so us as the public and as fans, sometimes we're not too forgiving. But these people are, and they will be forever remembered. I equate Hogan to Tiger Woods. I equate Muhammad Ali and Hogan and all these great sports heroes and great people who they're known all over the planet. I don't care where you put Ali in this universe, they would know him. Where you put Tiger Woods, they would know him. They know Hulk Hogan on every corner of this planet. And they will also know this kid, The Rock. He is a phenomena also, and he could have been bigger than Hogan or anybody in this wrestling business. But you know what? He's the biggest number 1 Hollywood star right now.
He definitely is. He's becoming almost bigger than Hogan because of all the Hollywood accolades. But with Hogan, what kind of role did he play in you holding on to the IC title for 64 weeks? Because I heard the rumor that they were thinking of cutting it short a bit, and he was saying, Honky's such a great heel, he deserves an even longer run with the IC strap.
Oh, I don't know that. I don't know that Hogan went to bat for, other than the fact that he might say something about when I walked by the day that they decided to put the belt on me. He just said, "What about this guy?" And Vince goes, "Well, maybe so." And then all of a sudden, the conversation took place. Whether Hogan was instrumental in a lot of things there, I don't know. I know that he, being at that particular point in time, what he was having to do and the pressure on him, this guy was doing radio and TV interviews over and countless hours he put in everywhere he went. It was the pressure. And he was doing 75, 80, 90 days in a row, just like everyone else. And you know, I'm not tooting Hogan's horn by any means, because we've had our differences down the highway. But he took our business, and every kid out there right now, even today, they can say what they want. Stone Cold can say he sold more merchandise than Hogan. Yeah, well, you did, because they licensed the merchandise and they put it in Kmart's and Walmart's and Target's and Circle K's and everywhere. You could only buy Hogan merchandise if you went to the arena and bought a ticket, or if you ordered it through the merchandise catalog. Remember that. So when people say they were bigger than Hogan, nobody's bigger than this guy. He gave us everything we have. He took us from barnyards, dirt floor arenas, to big multi-purpose stadiums. And for that, we should all be grateful. Now, Vince McMahon, he had a vision also, and he still does. And he is, I don't think there's a guy he's bigger than Barnum and Bailey, because he's a better and a better promoter than anyone.
Definitely true on Vince, and definitely true on Hogan. And both people always forget the dollar was worth more when Stone Cold was around than when Hogan was around. So obviously Austin should be making more money, like if you think about it. So Hogan is still the all-time number one box office draw. But what was
of course. Listen. We were doing 3 towns a night. I might be in a town with Macho Man, and we were in a 18,000 seat arena. It was sold out. Hogan was in a 22,000 seat arena. It was sold out. The number 3 town might be in a 10,000, 12,000 seat arena, and it was sold out. You're talking 3 towns a night, sold out every night of the week, 300 days a year. I'm telling you, the money was flowing into that. The WWF was turning a profit so huge, it was ridiculous.
Hogan definitely, he kind of set it off and put it all on the map.
And you know what? We were making the money off of house shows, not television. Vince didn't have these big TV contracts back then. WWE didn't have. They had syndicated television, which Vince was having to buy syndicated TV. He had to buy it to get it on the station in New York and New Jersey and Philadelphia and Boston. He had to pay for that. It's not like it is now, where there's a multi-million-dollar television contract where the TV pays for everything. The television contracts now they probably can pay all the talent just off TV. Yeah.
Probably
it's
right
huge.
on that for sure.
It's huge. Oh, gosh, yes.
And what's interesting with, the Hulkster, Vince kind of had an idea that he thought, the Ultimate Warrior was the next guy. Obviously, he didn't pan out to be quite the Hogan-level star. But what was the deal with SummerSlam 88 with the Ultimate Warrior? Because you held the title for about, I think it was 454 days, but then all of a sudden you're losing it 30 seconds to, the next upcoming guy, the Ultimate Warrior.
Well, that was the one time, and one of the few times, that I had creative control over what I was doing, that they said do it your way, and because they had a vision for him, and I was the stepping stone for their vision, and there was nothing really left on the table for me. There was nothing discussed about where I would go after that, what was going to happen with me at all. So I remembered there again. I mentioned Jesse Ventura earlier. Jesse had told me after I'd had the belt for about, I don't know, maybe 8-9 months. He said, the thing is, man, if you keep it too long, what you got to do is you got to drop it fast, leave, go away for 6-8 months, a year, and come back, and you can stay around. But that was the old way of thinking, because back in the territory days, 6-8 months, you would lose, leave town, and be gone for a year, 2 years, and you come back again. And you rotated around the country doing that. But WWE they were knocking off all these little territories. There was no place to leave and go to. So I just remember Jesse saying, if you're going to lose it quick. And I thought that was probably the best way to do it, and that's what happened. It was good for everyone. It was good for the Warrior. It was good for the company, and it didn't hurt me. I mean, people still hated me anyway.
Definitely one of the greatest heels of all time. I don't know if Warrior quite is, built up the way that Vince kind of wanted him to, but as far as you were such a great heel and you were so hated. Do you think that's a lost art in wrestling today because nobody's really over like you were as a heel? You were just, like you said, absolutely hated.
Well, no one knows how to be a bad guy now, and no one knows how to be a good guy. So that's what you have now is stuntmen. You have a 5-minute match of all stunts, as fast as you can go, as much as you can do, and try to keep the people from changing the channel on the clicker, because the TV, like I said before, the TV pays a lot of money, and they want ratings, and then if they have ratings, they sell ads, and ads cost more if the ratings are higher. So it's a television product now. We were a wrestling show on television. Now it's a television show that features wrestling. And I say that about, there's this thing that we used to have. It was a football game, and it was televised and called a Super Bowl. Now it's a big television show that features a football game where the halftime advertisements, more people know about those than they know who's playing in the game. And same thing with wrestling. It's a TV show called Raw now. That's what it is.
So well said, and that's definitely true. Do you think, with nowadays, like you kind of said before, it's missing the hot feuds and the hot angles and stuff, what do you think they could do to kind of change the direction of where they're going? Because obviously the ratings are in a little bit of a slump.
Well, anytime they want to get heat or do something that's hot, who do they bring out? Mr. McMahon. And Vince goes out and he's the ultimate bad guy, right or wrong.
Right.
And, I mean, he does the things that we did as bad guys. He says things, he humiliates people, and then the good guy gets the revenge. So for some reason, they just will not turn some of these other kids loose and let them go out and be bad guys. I don't know if it has to do with shareholders or television people that's kind of lead guide and directing some of the stuff behind the scenes. I really don't know. But until they get back to doing very, very personal issues with two guys, you're going to see this stuntman show. That's all you're going to see. That's all. And not only that. Now you got to look at this. You have guys, and I think Brett did an interview yesterday or a few days ago. I just saw it this morning, where Brett said it's a shame that the guys working the main events at WrestleMania are all part-timers. It's really hard to, and this is what happened with WCW, because you had guys down there that they couldn't work a day before anybody's birthday in their family and a day after anybody's birthday in their family. They couldn't work a day before any holiday or a day after any holiday. And some of them had, I only work 60 days a year, some people 100 days. How in the hell can you book a wrestler and he's going to be your world's champion, but he can only work 60 shows? I mean, you book yourself into a corner. There's no way out. You got to have people on the road. You got to have people at that TV every week. You got to have them cutting those promos, doing those dastardly deeds, and running away and instead of fighting. There's no cowards anymore. Everybody wants to be the heels. The bad guys want to be cool. Oh, he's a cool bad guy. I don't want to be cool. I want everybody out there to hate me. Cool does not sell tickets.
Do you think that
I just don't get it. I don't get it, and none of us old timers get it. So that's why they don't want us around.
Do you think that somebody needs to, maybe like a coach, someone of your ilk, maybe go in there and teach these guys psychology, maybe?
They don't want it. If they did, they would have us there. They have people training the guys down in the training center that never work main events anywhere. Nothing against the guys that's doing the training, but they have guys that trainers down there that never was the main event at Madison Square Garden, sold Madison Square Garden. I sold Madison Square Garden out, I think, 8 or 9 times, which is nothing. Bruno sold it out every month for 10 years. So, I mean, but still, when you think about you're on a main event, you're selling out all these buildings across the country, and the guy that's training people now, well, I don't know. I guess you don't have to be a great player to be a good coach. I can promise you, though, Vince knows what he has to do to get a heel hot. He knows what he has to do to make an angle hot. Believe me, he knows that, because you don't just forget someday how the business is designed. It's good versus evil, and you can't reinvent it. I don't care. You just can't do it.
Do you watch, a lot of the current wrestling? Do you see Roman Reigns kind of getting booed? Do you think that maybe he should become a heel and they should kind of play off that with the crowd?
I'll be perfectly honest with you and all the fans. I don't watch it. I don't even know what time it comes on out here in Phoenix. The last time I saw one of the shows was when I was there 3 years ago in Buffalo, and they pipe it into the locker room, but other than that, and the kids in the locker room playing video games on their phones, and they weren't even watching. So, no, I don't watch the product because I'm not involved with it. If I don't work for the post office, I don't care what the post office does. And if I drove a truck when I'm off work on Friday, I don't want to go look at my truck on the weekend when I'm home. So I'm more concerned with the independent wrestling scene, because that's where I'm more in touch with that and more in touch with what's going on there than anywhere else.
Definitely good to hear. But as we start to wind it down a bit here, I was very curious about, not the current relationship with you and WWE, but more so the reason why you're not in the WWE Hall of Fame. Obviously, we said greatest Intercontinental Champion of all time, one of the greatest villains in the history of the company, bar none. How come the Honky Tonk Man isn't headlining the Hall of Fame, or how come Honky Tonk isn't in the Hall of Fame?
Well, there's so many variables to that I've had different little squabbles with the office over things that, and they're a little bit vindictive, and they're a little bit hold grudges, and sometimes that plays a part in a lot of things, and who knows. I don't sit around and wait on that particular 203 area code to pop up on my phone. It's just something that, yeah. I got that from Stevie Richards. He said, I don't wait on that 203 area code anymore. I said, that sounds great. That's lovely. I'm going to start using that. But it is true. I mean, if you're sitting there waiting on that phone call, you could be an old man in a wheelchair by the time that phone rings. You have to pick up the pieces and move on, and let the chips fall where they may. And if we can do business, we can. If we can't, we can't. That's just how it is. Everything's negotiable.
Absolutely. And what was it like inducting your good friend and long-time wrestling associate Coco Beware several years ago when he got inducted into the Hall of Fame?
Oh, I enjoyed it. When they asked me, it was as if the people who called me didn't even know that I knew the guy. I think they were trying to set me up to see how I would act toward them, so that maybe later on they would put me in the Hall of Fame. And I said, sure, I'd love to do it. I said, I've known the guy for 30 years, and we trained together. And they said, well, do you need a script? We'll write it. I said, I've known the guy for 30 years. I don't need a script. Well, can you do it in 3 minutes? I said, of course I can. So that's how it happened. And I enjoyed doing it for Coco because, like I said, we started together. We trained together in a barn. The things that I said when I was talking up there and I gave his introduction was it was the truth. It was, it's so easy to go up and tell a good story if it's true, and it was all true, and that's how it was. And we've had hundreds of matches together, and we've never had a crossword in anywhere. And I saw him last month in Pennsylvania, first time in a couple of years, and it was like old times. We laughed and talked about things that happened 30 years ago.
Coco, definitely underrated legend for sure. Definitely, a favorite of mine, and it's good to see them kind of acknowledging some history, whether they knew it or not.
Yeah, and they never called him back. He's never been back to sit in the Hall of Fame, but you see the same guys sitting there every year. You see Ted, and you see Duggan, and you see Jake and Diamond Dallas Page and Scott Hall, and they'll all be sitting there now for the next 4 or 5 years. And it's like, what happened to some of these other guys that you put in, you never call back. So, but that's just the luck of the draw, I suppose.
Definitely. I guess that's just like the way it happens. But if I could, you especially, I'm very curious about this. You've been everywhere. You've been all the territories. You wrestled so many great guys. I mean, Jake the Snake, Macho Man, Hogan feuds, all these amazing matches. Do you have a favorite match or maybe a couple of favorite matches you've had in your career?
Well, I only wrestled Hogan a couple, 3 times. I would like to have wrestled him. I'd like to have. I was promised a run with him, and a run with Hogan was 5, 6, 7 months. If you ran that long with him, 4 months, and at $10,000 a show, 9 shows, that's $100,000 a week. I would have liked that. It didn't fall that way. I got the Intercontinental, and we just were never put together. I had really, really good matches. I had good matches with Steamboat in the matches that we had after he came back and did a few little things around the territory. I enjoyed working with Bruno when Bruno came in and was a substitute for Jake when Jake was on hiatus. And though that was, I've really, really, really enjoyed it because I was a fan of Bruno's, and just as a kid growing up and saw his picture in the magazines, I was like a big mark for him. And I got to wrestle Harley Race a couple of times there. That was really great. And some of the best, Macho Man we had good matches, but we weren't on a personal level at all. It was strictly business. I never saw Macho Man outside the arena. We didn't associate with each other as far as having drinks in the room or at a bar or a restaurant. We never had dinner. It was strictly business, but the gears worked there with him and I. They were a little rough getting started, but we got them to smooth out, and it went very well. The easiest, best matches that I thought I had was later on with Superfly Snuka. They were both, but the both of us, they had us in a position where Jimmy was coming back, and he had left under bad terms before for 4, 5, or 6 years before that, and I was on the way out, and I was getting him ready, making him look great, and he was winning to get ready to go in with Kurt Hennig, and they would put us on what we call a popcorn match every night, which was a 20-minute time limit, 25 minutes while people went for popcorn and took a break, and it was what we called, it was right after intermission to bring the crowd back in, settle them down. And we had really, really great matches, just old-timey stuff that I remember doing as a young kid in Memphis and that type of stuff, and it was really fun.
Do you have a favorite opponent that really sticks out, somebody you really gelled well together, somebody, you see on the paper you're going to wrestle a night and you knew the chemistry was just going to be there?
Oh, gosh. My cousin Lawler, Jerry, we could go in, we could have a match right now. And I never even have to talk to him. We haven't wrestled each other probably in 25 years, but I wouldn't even have to see him. All I have to do is go to the ring. And because it just worked that way. Same thing with the Bill Dundee or Jerry Jarrett or Tommy Rich or any of those guys, or Ricky Morton, Robert Gibson. The list goes on and on of guys I could just go in the ring with now. Like I said, I can go in the ring with Coco now. I don't even have to see him. I could go in the ring with Jimmy Snuka right now, and Steamboat, and even Macho Man. it's one of those things where we were all on the same page. Let me put it that way.
All great matches, all great opponents of yours for sure. But do you have a favorite territory you worked? I mean, obviously, you spent a lot of time in the WWF, and that's kind of what a lot of people remember you for. But would it be in Memphis? Was that kind of your favorite territory to work?
Well, it was where I got my start, and it's where I came back and made somewhat of a name for myself to get better known around the territories. I enjoyed Pensacola and Mobile, that area down on the coast. I lived on the beach. We worked, 5 days a week, and it was just fun. It was easy, and the Fullers were fun-loving guys, and we had good talent there. I was there with Brad Armstrong when he started, and Bob Armstrong, and you mentioned Austin Idol. That's how I got my hair black. I had blonde hair, and Austin Idol and myself had a hair dye match. There's not room enough in the territory for two guys with blonde hair. Somebody's hair is going to be changed colors. And I ended up losing each night, and my hair was black when we went back on TV. And that's how the whole Honky Tonk Man started.
Nice bit of trivia. I didn't know that. That's actually pretty cool. And Austin Idol.
Yeah, I enjoyed Tampa. I enjoyed the Tampa territory. It was kind of grueling because of the long trip to Miami and then up to Jacksonville or sometimes Tallahassee out of Tampa. But otherwise, I enjoyed that because obviously the weather was nice, the beer was cold, and the women were lovely. So. That all comes with the territory. So
that is great down there, Tampa, Florida, for sure. But
I enjoyed San Antonio. I just wasn't there long. My mother got sick and with cancer. She was sick with cancer, and I had stayed home with her. I took 9 months off, and I finally decided I'd go back out on the road because she was tended to get better. And 6 weeks later, she was not doing well, and I had to leave and come back, and then she passed away. I enjoyed San Antonio. I did, even though Tully was very difficult to get along with back then. That's just Tully's nature. But I loved it out there. I liked it. I really did.
And it's interesting, as you travel the world and you wrestle pretty much everywhere. But now you're kind of doing a comedy tour where you're going around everywhere, the Shake, Rattle, and Roll tour. How is that all coming down? How's that going?
We're just getting it kicked off, coming up in next month, June, July. We got some dates in August, and it's fun to do. It's kind of like what we're doing right here for the last hour. And I throw in a lot of humor, and I can make it PG or I can make it X-rated, and the X-rated show's much better, but it's fun, and it's a lot of interaction from the fans because, like you guys, every question there's a story behind that question, and it makes it easy. And then I throw in my Ric Flair. I'll do his strut across the floor, and real more spastic and exaggerated than he does it, and everything. Maybe. He must have been doing it too much the other morning to fall over and bust his head. But, they said it was his hand. I don't know who spun that story, but it was not his hand. He cracked his skull. So, and apparently somebody had tweeted even before the police came and got him that he was in the bar and he was really, really hammered. So. The WWE is going to spin the story the way they're good spin doctors.
It's a perfect case of what professional wrestling and social media can do in 2016. My God, if there was Twitter or Facebook 30 years ago, I think that we would know a little bit more about some of our
I
heroes.
tell you what, you would have known a lot more about me. I'll tell you that.
Well, I guess the best way to end it before the Honky Tonk Man leaves the building would be when you close the book forever on professional wrestling and you look back and you put your feet up in the easy chair, you say, what is the Honky Tonk Man's legacy on professional wrestling?
I did it my way. and I had fun doing it. I even though you have injuries, even though you have turmoil, even though you have things that you don't like, at the end of the day, it's the greatest job in the world. I don't know. What else? I'm not even going to sit in the easy chair. I'm the honky tonk man forever. As long as I have sideburns and they make hair dye, I'll always be the honky tonk man.
Thank you for watching the Hannibal TV. Please like this video if you enjoyed it, and click the subscribe button to not miss any of our latest shoot interviews, match videos, or news updates.